So here we go. We're going to see if Tesla's full self-driving can go from city to navigate on autopilot back to city driving. And we're going to see how much of the driving it can actually eliminate. So let's go. So go ahead and turn it on now that it is now active. It's really slow sometimes when pulling out, but again, it continues to just make sure that it is safe. We've got an oncoming car here. Let's see if it moves over a little bit. It does. You know, I'm kind of interested to see the results of this test because I've wondered what percentage of driving does the full self-driving actually quote unquote eliminate. And there's part of me that thinks that it's eliminated about 90 to 95%. However, that may be a bit of a misnomer because I think it's important to acknowledge that I am still, as a driver, still having to pay attention, still having to determine whether or not it should change lanes, whether or not it should pull in or out. This is by no means an autonomous venture. It is really remarkable it's come as far as it has, especially on city streets. But it's still yet to be determined to what degree can you actually sit back and relax. And I would suggest that it actually takes a little bit more effort in order to drive, because so much of what we do in driving is innate. It's a skill that we've done time and time again. And so you don't really think about it. And yet here, for example, I know that I'm going to have to change lanes. And so I'm going to be cognizant to make sure that the car is changing lanes at the appropriate time and doing so in a way that doesn't create more of an obstacle for the other drivers. Because that's part of what driving is it's more defensive than it is offensive. And I think in some respects, to the degree that Tesla has tried to build some of that defensiveness in by being overly cautious, still leaves a little bit to be questioned as to whether or not it can truly be done. But, you know, that's why I think these new technologies, in this case, using beta, you're actually testing the software, providing feedback to Tesla's full self-driving team and allowing them to hopefully make the product even better. I think the goal would be one day to truly be hands-off, but you know, with how Tesla's software and hardware has become much more driver dependent in order to operate, meaning it used to be that you could put a weight on the side of your steering wheel and the car would just drive itself. Now in the latest software update, it figures out that there's a Tesla defeat device or some sort of cheat device on there, and as such, it'll lock you out. I'm not suggesting that those things should be legal, but I think it's worth noting that it actually requires a higher degree of driver intervention versus some of the cars of yesteryear. I mean, you think about Cruise as an example in your old Malibu or your old Impala or Caprice or whatever it was that you were driving back in the day. I mean, you didn't have to pay attention. I mean, you simply just turned it on. Now you were responsible for the results. Now I've got a camera that is watching me, that if I take my eyes off the road, it knows that, and it'll shut the system down and bring the car to a stop. If my hands are off the wheel for an extended period of time, it'll start to beep at me. And if I continue to do that, I'll actually lose access to the full self-driving feature. I hope that they make these features better in a way that it requires less of the hands-on input. And yes, you need to be able to take over, but it would really be nice to be able to sit with my hands in my lap, let the car drive, and simply intervene if and when it wasn't doing what was desired. I think that's possible, but it has yet to actually be rolled out. And I think it has to do a lot with the negative press of some of the features that Tesla's had. For example, we've heard about people who have fallen asleep while driving their Tesla, and we hear about these disastrous crashes. And I think as a result, the few individuals who have abused the system in a way that it wasn't designed or intended to be used, I think we have to be extra vigilant as a result of that. So here it's going to change lanes. And I think what's interesting is it's going to change lanes and only to have to change lanes to go back in the left-hand lane. So this is an area where this has done this before in the past, and it's a little bit frustrating, but we're going to let the full self-driving software do its thing. So I'm going to drive up here, and you see already it's telling me I need to be in the left-hand lane. Now there's somebody in the left-hand side. If I were driving the vehicle, I would have simply just stayed in the left-hand lane and would have stayed there. But again, that's part of the software. So, and it hasn't changed lanes because people are now driving on the left-hand side and are in the way. Now I could initiate this turn by turning on the blinker, but I'm kind of curious to see what happens here if we miss the turn. So up ahead, I can see where interstate is, and we're going to be getting on interstate. So the question is, will it be able to get over in time? There's quite a few cars behind me. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars to the left behind me. And so the question is, will I be able to get over as a result of the decision that the software made? So in some respects, a human driver would have stayed on the left-hand side. So this is where I think some of the nuance of driving needs to be better baked into the system. But again, it's beta. It's hard to complain for a software that is still in beta feature. So here it knows I need to turn left. It's got a blue car, and the Prius must be hypermiling, so it's taking a long time to accelerate. And somebody in their Chevy HHR thinks that they're Michael Andretti, goes zipping past only to turn 2 seconds later. So again, you've got to love drivers. So we'll pull to the left-hand lane. We've got to cross 2 lanes of traffic. Good, we just got a left turn signal, so that's a nice feature. Here's an area where I don't quite know how to do this, and so we're going to get on interstate, and we'll see if it'll do this. What I have found that the full self-driving software does when it's merging from the on-ramp onto the road, I'm going to actually pay attention here, because what will happen is the car should automatically change lanes into the slow lane. So it's got the speed, up to speed. There's a dotted line, and so it's gonna try to merge. But what's gonna happen here? Okay, so it didn't do it. So sometimes what happens is it will actually try to jump 2 lanes of traffic. So it'll be in the on-ramp, it'll be pulling into the slow lane, it'll actually try to jump. So I actually have learned to pay really close attention, or I actually just turn it off altogether because of the concern that it will try to jump from one direction to the other. So here we've got about 4.5, 5 miles of driving on interstate. There's an exchange where we've got another portion of interstate merging onto interstate here, and then we've got our exit immediately after. So an area where there's typically a lot of accidents, and luckily there's not today, but it can be a bit harrowing because you've got cars exiting to go on the bypass, you have cars coming on from the bypass onto 75 South, and then you've got a busy exit coming up here. So this will be interesting to see actually how this goes, and to see how it navigates. But so far, full self-driving, 100% with 0 interventions, 0 brakes, 0 gas, 0 taking over. It's just worked. So I'm kind of interested to see what percentage of my driving is actually quote-unquote eliminated as a result of the driving. So here up ahead, we've got a slower semi-truck. We're up this long, slow grade, and trucks typically go a bit slower, and we see that they've got their hazard lights on, and so I'm curious to see what will happen. So it'll want to change, and there's a car to the left. There it's going to let me over, so thank you. That was nice of them. So it knew to get over, and thankfully the driver behind us stopped to allow it to get us over. So coming up, I've got a second waypoint on the road home, and then I've got our destination in the GPS. So I've got 2 waypoints because I wanted to have it to actually go interstate versus just stop and go traffic through interstate. I actually like this drive a little bit better, and it's about the same time time and distance to go this way, and I find it to be a bit more of an enjoyable drive. So here we've got 2 miles. We've got an overpass where the beginning of the bypass for Dayton is 675. So we've got cars that are exiting to the right. We're going to have a number of cars coming on to 75 South. And then we're actually going to see here whether or not it gets over. So we've got to get over in 1.8 miles. Normally I would get into the right-hand lane to wait. But let's just see exactly what the full self-driving does. I'm curious to see whether or not it knows to get over and whether or not it provides enough time. I find sometimes in my driving over the last 15,000 miles that I've had FSD beta that it takes too long to change lanes over. It waits too long. So here we've got 1.2 miles, and so now it's moved over. So this is good, and there's no traffic behind us. But here's where it's going to get to be a bit interesting. We've got a number of cars entering. You see that we have traffic starting to slow down, and yet we need to stay in this lane here in order to exit in the 7/10 or 8/10 of a mile that is remaining onto Austin Boulevard. So it looks like we're going to be fine here, but that's not always the case. Sometimes that's a bit of a 3-ring circus with folks moving left and right. It kind of creates a bit of a slowdown, which is why there can be some accidents here. But right now, so it's starting to notice that the cars in the left-hand lane are going slower. It's slowing down. And in 3/10 of a mile, we should be exiting to the right. So let's see what happens. So going down to 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour. So overall, couldn't be a better day right now in terms of the weather outside. So here we go. So it took the exit ramp very easily, and it will start to, it switches back to the full self-driving software. And let's see now, we have 2 lanes to turn left. We can be in the left or the right-hand lane. So it wants to be in the left-hand lane, all right. And we'll see if we make this light up here. So there's an individual on the side of the curb. Let's see what it does with this individual. So it slows down a little bit for him, a little bit more abruptly. So here we go. We're now in the turn lane. It's saying to turn to the left. So it turned into the turn lane. So up here is a very unique intersection in terms of how traffic is laid out. You have these funky exits. And there are sometimes, so I don't know, oh, it's pulling into, so I'm going to take over here because I don't want to go there. So edit trip. We're going to take that destination out. Done. So now it's stopping for the stoplight to the left. Now it realizes it's not its stoplight. See, it stops. So this is where it can be a bit embarrassing. So that light, because it's so close here, it picks it up and it thinks that it's the traffic light for this lane, whereas it's not. It's really a unique intersection. It's one of the only ones I've seen like it in the United States. I'm sure it somehow allows more traffic to go through, but again, it's a bit odd. So the disengagement back there was on my fault because it had the destination back in the shopping plaza over there. So I should have picked a destination here on the main road as we drove through. So over there's a Mustang Mach-E, beautiful looking little slate concrete gray looking color, so pretty car. So here up ahead there are two lights and then a third light for the on-ramp or the merging oncoming traffic. So this is where it's going to be a little bit interesting. So you see how our light is getting ready to turn green. This light up here is red. So what's going to happen is it's going to slam on the brakes right about now. There we go. Because it thinks that that's our light. I've had to press the gas to ask it to move forward because it'll just stop in the middle of traffic because that light is so close. So this is where I think there needs to be a little bit more refinement in terms of the lights that it picks up and that it uses for stopping and going. Clearly traffic's going. That light has been like that for a number of years, and just because it's so close to this road, I wish there was a way that you could tell it, just ignore that light over there, but that's not the case. The other thing that's going to happen is we're driving home here in a moment, it'll want to change lanes into the right-hand lane. And while this is 2 lanes here, in about another mile, it merges from 2 lanes down to 1 lane. And so you need to stay in the left-hand lane. But let's just see what happens here. It's gotten better. But see, it's going to change lanes. We're going to let it do that. But in no more than half a mile, I'm going to have to change back to the left-hand lane because this lane will end after not this traffic light, but the next one coming up in about a half a mile. So this is where I think sometimes I wish it would know, hey, you know, the driver is always in the left-hand lane here. Maybe I should stay in the lane as a result of some of the machine learning that's taking place. But again, this is where, you know, rules and then predictive driving can't quite come into play. So this is where I wish it would know, hey, the driver's always in the left-hand lane. Let's stay in the left-hand lane. So here we go. We've got a red light. So what's going to happen is I'm going to pull up to this light. The traffic's going to go straight. And then as you can see, there's a sign up ahead. It's going to merge left. And so it's going to force me to merge into traffic on the left-hand side. So in 250 feet up ahead, it's going to quit. So I could do one of two things. I could take over, accelerate really quick, and just beat this this GMC Sierra next to me off the line. But let's let full self-driving do its thing. But I think here's the thing to remember. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars back behind me to the left. And so in some ways, I'm creating a bit of a nuisance for the drivers. And then on top of this, the person behind me wants to go right and now can't turn right because I'm now sitting. So let's see what happens here. So does it speed up past the truck? So there we go. It actually went past the truck. So now it's going to go left and just merge into his lane, no light. So I should have had a turn signal on. So let's see what happens here. So it's predicting the correct lane as we drive home. And the rest of the trip should be pretty uneventful here relative to the turns. So pretty simple turns and navigation. But again, just a couple of things. If it were me, I would have been in the left-hand lane. 2, if I'd forgotten and I was somewhere new, I would have signaled and let the person behind me know. But as a result, the car just did what it was going to do. So here we're driving on 2-lane roads. Very clear visibility, clear lane lines. So as a result, not a lot of things. But again, I am paying attention to make sure that the car is not going to do something that it shouldn't do. I think the most interesting line in the software warning when you get full self-driving is the car can do the worst thing at the absolute wrong time. And that is absolutely true. So it's brilliant 99% of the time, but just that 1% can really cause a lot of headaches. And again, I've had it try to jump lines, and you know, you have your hands on the wheel, and so you're able to take over at any point in time. again, I'm looking forward to going over the data from these two drives, both to work and then the return from work home, and just to see what percentage of my driving actually was eliminated as a result of using the full self-driving beta. I still don't know whether it is more relaxing, which is an interesting thought. I had thought originally that it would be a lot more relaxing if I had been using the full self-driving and just simply having it do the turns. And there are sometimes it can be like that. But I do feel like I'm a bit more hyper attentive when I'm driving, and I'm more cognizant of the car. But I don't know that that's a bad thing. I do feel as though the safety features on the car do make it safer. I had an example where I was driving on 75 and a semi truck pulled. It was exiting a rest area. It drove across the grass into my lane of traffic, the slow lane of traffic, going 2 miles an hour. And as a result, the car saw this and it slammed on the brakes and prevented me from having to catch it. I would have caught it, and I probably could have stopped, but it caught it a lot sooner as a result of the cameras looking ahead. So just kind of interesting to see exactly how things work. And I think on the whole, it is safer as a result. So we'll see what's going on. So up ahead, we're likely going to get a turn lane. We've got a school bus up ahead that is looking to turn into our lane of traffic. And so we'll just need to pay attention to see what's going on and what they're going to do, and whether they'll be able to go before I get a green light. Here, making the left-hand turn. It's going to slow down as the truck pulls out, and then it accelerates pretty hard to get past it. This is where it gets a little bit exciting. So for some reason, it turned the wheels to the left quickly. Turning in. And even though the speed limit's 45 up there, it's going to go 25 miles an hour until it gets to here. And then it's going to go. So coming up is one of the more interesting turns. When I turn into the neighborhood, right now the speed limit's 45. It's going to slow down and it'll safely make the turn, but it will accelerate pretty hard for a short distance. So here we go. So it's ending the navigation on autopilot. So here we go. So I'm going to turn it off. So when I do turn into the neighborhood, it will accelerate pretty hard to try to get back up to 45, only to have it hit the 25 miles an hour sign and then to slow down. So there you have it, full self-driving, really taking us from point to point, and with the exception of human intervention, having the wrong destination in the GPS and trying to exit into a shopping area. Really zero interventions the entire way, and while it's not perfect, it is really remarkable that there's a software that it can make turns left and right. So I took a look at the footage from both the trip to and from work, and we were able to eliminate essentially 98% of the driving using Tesla's full self-driving software. So pretty slick. Here are my thoughts. So there you have it. We're home safely. I'm curious what you think about full self-driving after you've seen two different examples, one leaving from home and then going to work through purely full self-driving through city streets, and then the other one on the return trip where we went city streets, autopilot onto the highway, and then back to city streets. You saw a couple of those spots where it just did things a little bit differently than I think we would have anticipated because of the closeness of the lights. But I'm curious what you think. Full self-driving life hack, or whether it is simply, again, a cute party trick that is not ready for prime time. So you've seen it here. These are just two occurrences. I haven't filmed a bunch of these. This is just really my experience using full self-drive. I wanted to bring you along for the ride. If you like this content, hit the thumbs up and consider hitting the subscribe button for the almighty YouTube algorithm. Thanks so much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you out there. Make it a good one.